All right, and we're live. What is going on, everybody? My name is Andrew Sanchez, and welcome back for another week of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Monday, October 3rd, 2022, winding down week 4, wrapping it up with a Monday night football showdown tonight between the Rams and the 49ers. For those of you who are new, welcome. This is a show where we review how to use SaberSim's tools, talk DFS theory, answer questions from the community that come in via Discord and via YouTube chat. So if you're new here, welcome. Happy to have you. Looking forward to answering any and all questions today. But before we get started, we have to talk about SaberSim's weekly max challenge. So if you're not familiar with the weekly max challenge, I'm going to bring it on the screen now. And introducing the max challenge, we're doing this giveaway for the second year in a row. And we actually had a winner this week. So the max challenge is centered around the mini max contest on DraftKings. You can enter it for 50 cents an entry up to 150 times. So the rules of the mini max can be found down here under eligibility requirements. You have to use the SaberSim logo on DraftKings, and here are instructions of how to upload that. Register, max out the mini max, and you are going to be eligible for all of these prizes here. So the winner of the contest was a SaberSim user, 12-pack abs. Congratulations on taking it down and representing the community. Awesome victory. And as a side note, we went in and looked, and SaberSim users accounted for 50 out of the top 100 entries in the mini max this week. An awesome feat. It seemed like a lot of people had good days. I'm sure the projections were very good. So shout out to the modeling team and all they were able to do. But happy to see people having success. And so 12-pack abs will be receiving, if we go down here to prizes, the top finisher will get 1 free month of SaberSim, a SaberSim t-shirt, and an entry into the end of the season free roll on top of his prizes for taking it down, which include, hold on one second, where is it? I know it's the belt. I know you're gonna get the custom belt, but I want to find it really quickly. We're gonna do the giveaway for the free tickets for next week's contest. Here it is. Bonus for winning the mini max: 1 free year of SaberSim Advanced on top of the 1 month, and a custom championship belt, and a dedicated max challenge spot in the winner circle. I don't know what that's gonna look like, but it's something new we added this year. So stay tuned and we will figure it out. So for those of you unfamiliar with the SaberSim winner's circle, if you hover over to our main page, let me go 1 second here, sabersim.com. And up here, the winner circle, this is where we shout out people in the community who have won, and you can scroll through here. So it sounds like we're going to have some type of dedicated page for the Max Challenge giveaway. I don't know what that's going to look like, but stay tuned, and we are going to get it up there. So for those of you not named 12-pack abs, this is the sheet where that we share in Discord that shows everybody who maxed for the week. And you can take a look in Discord. It's tagged in the office hours thread. Make sure that your name's on it. But throwing that in here, looks like we had 131 maxers this week. Going to hit the shuffle a couple times here to make sure that we mix it up, and we will send it off. Here we go. So this week's winner for the free tickets to next week's mini max is indeed Mustafa. Congratulations. Someone from the team will reach out to you via email to make sure that you get your free tickets. And if you're not tuned in, well, make sure you find out. So, guys, awesome week for SaberSim on the main slate. Just a lot of winning screenshots all over the place. If you do rep the SaberSim avatar and you finished in the top 5 of a contest, you can go over to the winner's circle, check out the rules at the top, and if you did indeed meet the requirements, post a picture on Twitter and tag us, and we will get you your SaberSim gear. So the SaberSim gear is always listed underneath the tier, and so I've seen them coming in all day. So looking forward to getting everyone's gear out. It's an awesome week 4 main slate. So looking forward to many more positive main slate weeks. But that being said, let's get into office hours. A lot of questions following the weekend. So we're going to get to them all. We're going to start with Discord first, and then we will be moving over to YouTube chat. So let me just hover over to the first question today that came in on Saturday, it looks like. And the question came in from Slow-Mo. So I'm going to throw my SaberSim back on the screen right now, and then we are going to get going. So should see SaberSim back up. And the first question from Slow-Mo 3210 coming in here. All right. Question reads, how does changing a projection affect the rest of the build? For example, if I add 3 fantasy points to someone, does that mean the builder will only use simulations that had that amount as the outcome? Does this come into play with the sim precision slider? So, Slow-Mo, good question. I'm going to show you exactly how that works right now. You know what? I am having an issue here. Hold on 1 second, guys. Let me get my screen. My projections weren't popping up for some reason. Don't know why. So I'm going to see if I can fix that. That way I could give you some examples. But basically, to answer the question, what happens is when you adjust someone's projection by, let's say, this is the Monday, Thursday slate. We'll just use this as an example. Jonathan Taylor, if we were to increase Jonathan Taylor's projection from 22 to, let's say, 25, if you go over here and click on Jonathan Taylor's name, you'll see his distribution here, which is his range of outcomes in the sims. So what happens is for every sim where he scores 30, that's now 33. For every sim where he scores 20, that's now 23. So we add the difference of whatever adjustment you make to the projections that we pull from the sims. And so basically shifting his whole range of outcomes over by the 3 points in your example. So that's how that works. And let me know if you have any more questions, but it shouldn't affect the sim precision slider at all. So it's just every outcome moves up 3 points. So next question coming in from Satch, and the question is asking about late swap, which I think it's a great time to start talking about late swap, especially with NBA coming around. So it looks like NBA season starts in about 2 weeks from tomorrow. I know NHL starts on Friday with the Showdown. So looking forward to having some more sports to play. But question is, does late swap act more like an optimizer that goes off of projections? Put another way, why is there a choice of cash, multiplier, GPP, etc. when doing late swap? Appreciate you guys answering all these nagging questions. So, Saj, no nagging questions. All questions are good questions. Happy to touch on them all. I don't have, I guess we can go back to the main slate from yesterday and talk a little bit late swap here. So, first things first. So, late swap works exactly the way building a regular build works. So what you're going to do is you're going to click the plus button here, plus icon, to go to the step 2 build screen. And then you're going to toggle this on here, this late swap in the top right corner. If you're in the middle of a slate, this will be toggled on automatically. But since the slate's over, it's off. So for the sake of example, we're going to toggle this on, and then you're going to see all the contests come up here, and it'll show you your different contests if you have some cash, some GPP, etc. So you have a couple options. You can only swap lineups containing out players. If you toggle this on, it'll find the out players based on the afternoon game inactives for football, for instance. And then you would only late swap players in those lineups. So for this case, we have 0 because the slate's over. But so then that's one option. Other option is late swapping your entire portfolio. And what that will do, so, going back to your question, SaberSim does not act like a traditional optimizer when late swapping. It's not late swapping to get you the highest projected point total and just jamming in projection wherever there's salary left. So think about it as if, let's say it's a 8-player lineup and 4 of them have locked already. So SaberSim will, look at the remaining positions that haven't started, the remaining salary, and then build around that. We're still using the sims and the sim outputs. Your settings are still the same. So whatever setting you can, if you built your settings here, and let's say you're having a bad afternoon and you want to increase your sliders in an effort to get a little different from the field, then you can totally adjust these sliders and rebuild, and we'll still follow the sliders as if you were building for the first time and just build around the available slots left in your lineup. So any more questions there, just let me know. But we're going to keep moving today. We have a lot of questions, and I just want to make sure that we get to everything. So we will for sure. But the next question coming in from Fail Mary, and the question is, what would you suggest as a pre-build max exposure in NFL using 350 plus unique lineups? And in general, do you suggest ever limiting exposure pre-build? So, Fail Mary, good question. What I will say is that, I don't have like a global exposure cap that I can give you. I think it's a very much a risk tolerance based question. It's a personal question. Some people have higher risk and want to have more exposure to the plays that they feel really strongly about. Some people want to get more diverse. For a 350 lineup pool, I can tell you like what I personally think. I'll say that, I'm somebody who builds my diversifiers in one build and my elevators in a different build. And when thinking about it, when I'm doing my elevators, I'm building maybe 20 lineups total, and I have no problem being 100% exposed to somebody if they're just like a smash button play. But then, going over to my diversifier portfolio, thinking about having 100% exposure in 300 plus unique lineups is just something that I don't tolerate. I can't tolerate personally from a risk tolerance perspective. I always try and take into account the player's ownership for that I'm talking about. So like, if I have somebody who's going to be 50% owned, like, do I mind 50% ownership? I mean, it's matching the field. So I think it's a case by case basis. If your gut's telling you like, man, this is really making me nervous, I would dial it down a bit. That's kind of what step 3 is for, is to just really do some risk management and come to a portfolio of lineups that you are okay with no matter what the outcome happens. And, every week guys get hurt. And sometimes like if somebody gets hurt and, you're really highly exposed to them and it just bugs you the rest of the day, maybe you're playing like a little, maybe you had too much money invested in that play and you should dial it down. So those are my thoughts. on the topic. Maybe not the answer you're looking for, but I think that is the best answer I got, to be quite honest. So moving on to the next question from Neil. And this question from Neil is talking about sliders and just building your lineups in a together or separate, which I feel like we just talked about. So this kind of just flows right into it. So question says, slider setting question. I play some small field stuff, 204 defaults, and some large field 150 max stuff, 448 default. Just wondering if you have an opinion on if it makes sense to run separate builds or to run all my builds in one lineup and run the sliders in the middle of the two defaults, for example. Neil, I feel like I just gave my best answer to the question. I'm a person who follows the DFS Profit Plan that SaberSim put out pretty much to a T. I like to split up my diversifiers and my elevators into two separate builds and just treat them a little differently. So to answer your question, in your example, like your small field stuff is the elevators, and your 150 max stuff is the diversifiers. So I would definitely treat them differently. I feel like that's kind of in line with our research and the best portfolio of contests you can play. I think that is, best practice. I think if you're crunched for time and it's getting close to lock, I think it's okay to build them all together. Or, if you have time constraints and you can only really pay attention to one build, I would definitely build them all together. But best practice is to split up your diversifiers and your elevators into two contests, just because the recommended settings change so drastically. What it takes to win 150 max is a lot more points used on average than what it takes to win a single entry where people only have one bullet. So that's how I would treat your portfolio. All right. Next question coming in from, I'm going to say, Tist the Beast in Discord, asking about the profit plan. And reading this question, I'll read it first and then I'll comment. Profit plan question: since I had my first big step up in bankroll, would you recommend playing 60 lineups in the $1 mini max first, or maxing out the $3.20 max? Thanks. So what I was going to say is that it sounds like you had a good win. So congratulations on the win. I don't know what it was, but if you were repping the SaberSim logo, make sure to post it and send it in and we'll get you some gear. But, going back to the question, so we definitely recommend playing contests that you can max out first before playing contests where you're entering a limited number of lineups into. So for your question here, what I would do I would not play the mini max, and I would instead play the $3.20 max, just because that you have the max number of entries in that contest. Nobody has more entries than you do as like a single user. So maxing it out is definitely the route I would go. What I would also say, there was a comment that I just wanted to touch on from Shady Advice in response to this question. And he said, if you're talking about NFL, I would wait until Sunday and enter the second or third version of the $3.20 max that will be below the threshold that sharks can't play, probably before the large mini max. So just to elaborate on what Shady's talking about. So DraftKings has like a fair play initiative. I don't remember the exact name of it, but basically players with $1 million or more, it's either I think it's entry fees, and entry fees cannot play contests below $3 threshold. If there are contests at the $3 threshold and the $3 to $5 threshold, and the prize pool is above $25,000, then those players who were limited can those players that how do I say it? Sorry guys. So the players with $1 million or more in entry fees cannot play contests below $3, and they can't play contests that are $5 and under where the prize pool is less than 25,000. So going back to Shady's response, the $3.20 max, the prize pool is like $1.5 million total. So those players can play in those contests. So his recommendation is wait till that contest gets close to filling, and then wait for DraftKings to open a smaller version of the $3.20 max that is below that prize pool threshold, where those players will not have access to it. So, the concept really just goes back to contest selection and avoiding sharp players as much as you possibly can. So I think it's definitely a good option if you're, lurking around in the lobby on a Sunday morning. If you want to try that out, I think there's definitely merit to that approach. And contest selection is the number one thing in DFS that probably finding the right opponents to play against is should be at the top of everybody's contest selection thoughts. So you go to enter lineups, and you should think, who's in this contest, where can I get the most money down, where the giant squids of the world are not in these lobbies. And so I like the response from Shady, and I think that's how you should think about it. But either way, the $3.20 max is probably your best bet. So, all right, moving on to Fail Mary has another question in the Discord. And guys, we're starting to come up on the end of our Discord questions. We'll be moving over to YouTube chat. If there's anything that you guys want to ask before tonight or before the end of the show, get it in the chat down, and I'll make sure to get to it. So, question reads, I simply cannot wrap my head around one thing. Should I create a new build with my own tuned in exposures at the end, or does this affect the final purity of my sims? So good question, Fail Mary. Getting back to, we made a small tweak as well. So, getting back to our build, review, adjust, we're going to be changing that up a little bit to build, review, revise, just so you guys know. So I'm going to be using a little different jargon there. So build, review, revise, getting back to that, that is still in place. And we still think it's important to tell the builder what you want your lineups to look like. So, still run a build, make your adjustments. If you're with meeting the adjustments and you have to send your exposures back to the home screen, that's still okay. And I think it's good for you to do. So if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, you go into any build and you make adjustments to exposures, to stack types, to game stacks, to team stacks. And, the builder tells you that, we can no longer meet the exposures that you requested. You hit this arrow right here, and then you send the projection and exposure adjustments back to the home screen, and then run a new build with those exposures in mind from the beginning. And that's still the right thing to do. That way your portfolio of lineups looks the way you want it to. I wouldn't worry about affecting the sims at all. The sims are great. The sims are still going to be, pure. You're not affecting anything. All you're doing is just telling us up front what you want, and the sims are going to run with those requirements in mind. So that's how I would think about it. And not to brag or anything, but I had a decent Sunday, and I had full faded the top 3 salaried quarterbacks, just X them off, and ended up working out pretty well for me. So just something from my own Sunday. I feel like a lot of people that built with Saber Sim probably had a good day. Happy for everybody, and want to keep that streak going there. So, all right, moving over to YouTube chat, guys, and let's see, feature request here from Chris, and Chris said, can we limit exposure to a player in relation to another player? Example, I want to play X% of Darrell Henderson, but only want Cam Akers in a small percent of Hendo lineups. So, Chris, good question. I'm assuming that you've played around with this and have realized there's not a perfect way to do it at the moment. So I can show you a workaround for the time being. So let's hover over to the Showdown slate for tonight. I'm going to run a couple of lineups really quickly to get us going so we can demo this. But, long story short, this is something that we want to build into the app in the future. I think it's an awesome feature, especially for showdowns. And the way you have to do this now is through the filters. So let's say that, I want to limit my flex positions. I don't want any flexes where any lineups with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson in the flex, as you so pointed out. So I'll filter for Cam Akers here. This little plus icon will show me all lineups with Cam Akers, which is going to be, I would also hover over to the pool. So if you look in lineups, you're going to only see the ones that are in your 150. So I have 27 lineups in my 150 that have Cam Akers in the flex, but I have 119 total that have Cam Akers out of my 500 that I built. So let's filter for Cam Akers, and let's also filter for Darrell Henderson. So right out of the gate, it seems like SaberSim understands the concept that you were talking about of not wanting too much of these guys together. So, I only have one in my 150, and I only have 15 lineups total where they're together. So I believe we had 119 Cam Akers lineups. Well, let's say approximately, a little less than 10% of them are where Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson are used together. And you can also see like how far down in your pool of lineups that you have to go to find them. So like one in your 150. But anyways, getting back to what you're trying to do, you filter for both of them together, and then you can come in here and you can hit this little trash icon. And then this will discard the lineup into the trash. So it will not be in your pool of available lineups to be used. You could do this for as many lineups as you want. If you're only worried about them in the lineups that you're taking with you into your contests, then just look at the lineups. If you know that, I don't want one of these sneaking in here no matter what, you could trash them from the pool. But as of right now, all these lineups are grayed out and they're not going to be used. So that's how you accomplish that. We do want to build in some more tools to be able to manage it from like the exposures tab, but not too hard. Good workaround. I see the value. So hopefully that answers your question. And another question from Chris. Also, how do I access the Office Hours Discord channel? I joined the SaberSim Discord, but can't see that one. So, Chris, make sure you've gone through the verification steps in Discord with the SaberSim bot, and it'll make sure that you have to be using the same email for Discord as you use for your SaberSim account. And then the two should link up right away. If you don't see that, what I would do is, I don't know if we have a channel. I'm gonna have to check, but you would go over to the information and the verification channel, and then in the verification, it'll take you through the steps. So, Ben is the person on there who's like posted the verification link. If you're having issues with it, you could just message Ben and he'll get you taken care of. So hopefully you're not running into any issues there. So, all right. Next question, everybody. This one is coming in from Dat Boy Steven 24. And guys, this is the last question I have. Happy to talk about the showdown slate tonight, whatever you guys want to talk about. So get your questions in. But moving on to Dat Boy Steven, and his question is, on showdown single game, should I sort lineups by saber score or projected score? So good question here. We're still in our build from the showdown, so we're just going to use this one for now. And if you don't know, saber score, there we have a couple different sorting methods. We have saber score, projected score. This is actual scores for after the game, ownership, and salary. So saber score is our attempt to quantify the upside of any given lineup. And, SaberSim understands correlation. SaberSim understands ranges of outcomes, understands ownership. We weigh all of these things together and apply a ranking to a lineup in based on our own algorithm. Basically, you can sort by projected score, you can sort by ownership and salary as well. We always recommend that people use Saber Score. It's our own sorting method that's normalized to 100. So your top lineup will always be 100, and then every lineup will be down from there will be a lower Saber Score lineup. So I would always recommend using Saber Score. That's what I use. I don't really use projected score. So if you have any more questions there, let me know. All right. Next question from Tryhard Sweat. Can you give an example of a good stacking rule for the Showdown slate using the new rule settings? Yep, I sure can. So let's go back to the home screen and let's talk about some rules. So, the way I like to use the rules for Showdown specifically is to try and make sure I'm not getting too chalky of lineups. So, a question that I like, a rule that I like to use is that I'll come in here and I'll look at my captains, and I'm typically looking for wide receiver captains or like pass catchers more often than not. So I'll sort by my ownership. I'll look like, okay, Cooper Kupp is projected to be 19% owned as a captain. That's pretty high. That's almost 1 in 5 lineups. And if you're playing like the flagship Millie contest that has, almost 200,000 entries, like that's a lot of lineups. It's like 40,000, I think. So what I'll do is, okay, who's Cooper Kupp most correlated with? And as most of you could guess, it's going to be Matt Stafford. So Matt Stafford has a huge correlation to Cooper Kupp. So you have to think that these two players in combination are going to be used a lot. So what I like to do is, okay, Cooper Kupp captain and Matt Stafford in the flex. I'm going to set a rule. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to add a new rule. I'm going to do a group rule, and then I'm going to do an if then. So, if I'm using Cooper Kupp captain and Matt Stafford in the flex, then you have to put this to if at least 2. So make sure this is if at least 2 here. That way it accounts for both of them. Then use at least 1 secondary player. And what I like to do is I'll come in here and I'll either look at sort by my projection or sort by my ownership. And I'll find like a threshold that I like where I'll say that, you have to use 1 player that's essentially low owned or has a low projection. And so less people are likely to roster that player in an attempt to make my lineups that are going to be the highest owned captain, probably with his highest paired flex player, more unique. And I think that that's like a good way to use the rules for Showdown slates. I'm trying to build in a way where when I win, I get as much of first place equity as I can. So I try to build, I'm not saying like don't use these players together. Like I want to make that distinction. That's why I do an if then. I don't come in here and say, use no more than one of these 2 players, because I don't want to limit the times where they're used together, but I just want to add a little something in there to try and make it more unique when this lineup combination comes together. So that's a rule that I like to use for Showdown. I haven't really dove into the Showdown slate yet, so I don't know where that threshold lies for me yet. After the stream, I'll probably start digging in and getting my lineups ready. But that's the way I like to think about it. I challenge you guys to, try and think outside the box and, build good lineups that have the ability to take as much first place equity as possible. So hope I answered your question there. Try hard, sweat. And moving on to the next question from Datboy Steven again. And he said, do you set stacking rules for single game? So no, I do not set stacking rules for a single game. one thing I think is worth noting is like if you come in to a build, and I would always like check your stack types. Like don't forget about these tabs up here just because we're not on a main slate. Like still see if the builder is leaning one direction or the other. Check. I mean, game stacks is like not important, but I was like, okay, we're leaning like a little bit toward the Rams. Like, what's the Vegas line? What's the total? Who's the favorite? And come in here and check your stack types too. So, what it's telling me is like we're pretty even with the pool as a whole. So these exposures here on the left are your exposures in your 150 lineups, and then these are your exposures in your entire set of 500. So the builder's like not really leaning too far away from the entire pool. It's a good reflection of it. Sometimes you'll come in here and the builder will just like really not like these balanced stacks, and you'll have like 20% of them, and that's just like more info for you to take into account. Or you say, maybe I want to move closer toward the pool, or maybe I'm okay moving away from these balanced builds and playing more 5-1 stacks, which is like more of the onslaught type of stacks. So I think like it's important to try and get all the information that the builder's telling you and before making any like final decisions. So, all right, John, I'm going to get back to the Discord. I will not finish the stream before hopping back and checking out any new questions that came in. So thank you for the heads up. But so I will definitely get back to Discord before the stream is over, everybody. So, all right, John M, another one. Johnny Mo, I will jump back. So I'm going to hit this last question in YouTube chat from Datboy Steven, and then I'm going to jump back over to Discord. Question says, do you set exposure for every player? So no, I definitely do not. One way I like to think about these things is that SaberSim is like a great builder. And, I use the word builder instead of optimizer because it's not your traditional optimizer. It's a machine that understands correlation, ownership dynamics, understands ranges of outcomes, and understands how to like kind of weigh all those things together to give you good lineups. So what I like to think is like SaberSim's a lot smarter than me and can think of all of these things at once and make these decisions. I mean, look how long it takes it to build 500 lineups. So it take me hours to build 500 lineups by hand, and a lot of them will probably be net minus EV. But I really like to like focus on, I'd say 1 to 5 points or players or combinations that I want to add value on. So if I just like maybe I read like a coach's quote or saw some things on like doing outside research, heard something on like a different podcast, and I've just determined that Cooper Kupp is like not the best play at captain tonight. So then I'm gonna take like a stand on Cooper Kupp there. I'm gonna take a stand on George Kittle for whatever reason here, and I'm gonna make like 3 to 5 adjustments, and those will like be me putting my own perspective or my own touch on my lineups. But I don't really want to get in here and start changing everything because SaberSim is giving you these exposures saying that these are the highest expected value lineups you can play. If you disagree with that strongly, I think it's okay to come in here, make some adjustments, send those back to the home screen and rebuild. But I wouldn't sit here and make adjustments for every single player. I would really try and pick and choose your spots where you feel like you can add value because, SaberSim is smart, but it's a computer. It's not human. It's gonna miss things. And I think that, thinking about like man plus machine as opposed to like man versus machine is a much better way. So it's that combination factor working with the tool and will help you to have better lineups. So try and pick some spots. I would highly suggest not changing exposure for every single player. So, one more question. Would you just set MVP exposure on FanDuel? No. I think it's totally okay to adjust MVP and flex, captain and flex. I don't think that you have to just focus on one or the other. So definitely okay to make adjustments in both slots. I would just be wary of making too many total. So that's where I fall on the issue. Moving back over to Discord, looks like we got some more questions in. Awesome. Happy to talk about them. So question here from Fisty. And the question is, SaberSim won't override your adjustments. So in that situation, you would be neutral. So, I'm sorry. I missed the original question. This is a response. So the original question came in from Talini711, and Talini said, to follow up on the sim projection question, let's say later the team adjusts Jonathan Taylor's projection by 3. Also, do you add 3 from my adjustment to the new projection? So the answer to that is no. So if you come in to the home screen for any slate, for any game, and you adjust the exposures of a player, we will never override your custom projection. The only time we ever do that is when a player is marked out. And if they're marked out, they will get unchecked from the pool. That's just because, we don't want you to end up with out players in your lineup ever. So we'll override a custom projection only if a player is out. But if you come in here and increase Cooper Kupp's projection to 37, we will not adjust it regardless of how the SaberSim projection gets updated. So that's why there's 2 columns. You can kind of see how they ebb and flow, especially in weekly sports, throughout the week and things like that. So just a note there, no, we will never make that adjustment because we don't want to override any work that you've done to the projections up to that point. So next question from John, and this is the question that John was calling out in the YouTube chat. So question is, on a typical Sunday slate, I have been doing different builds for all my contest types. So one for the 150 max, one for my 20 max, one for single entry, etc. As long as I have enough time, this seems to be working fine for now. However, one of the biggest issues I'm running into is being able to quickly change the settings to how I want them. Basically, I wish I could save global settings for different builds. Is there a good way to do this currently? For instance, in my diversifiers, I use a lower exposure than I would for my elevators, but I'm not sure of the best way to save time when going to different build types and changing settings. So, John, good question here. Happy to touch on it. So, I think that if you want to build all of your contests separately, and you had the time for it, that's totally okay. So if you want to have, 4 different builds, one for 150s, one for 20 maxes, one for 3 maxes, and one for single entries, and your process allows you to do that, that's totally okay. I think it's okay as well to combine your 20 maxes and 150 maxes, as well as your single entries and 3 maxes into a diversifier build and an elevator build as well. And some people even like to, build it all together. So there's no right way, a lot of different ways to do it. I would say, getting back to your question about, saving exposures or making these global changes, what I would do in your case, since you're building them all differently. So no, there's no way to say, in my 150 maxes, I only want 50% of Cooper Kupp, and then kind of save that exposure setting, and then say, in my 20 maxes, I'm okay with 75% Cooper Kupp, and then save that. I would just go about the sequencing of your builds a little differently. So what I would do is start with your 150 max, where you probably get a little more diverse with your exposures and a little more spread out, which I'm making an assumption just based on something that I think is like the right thing to do is when you have more entries to spread out a little more. And then, so like run your 150 max, fill your contests that with the lineups that you're comfortable with, and then go into your exposures and or stack types, whatever you're changing. I don't know exactly what you're changing. And then, either like loosen the restrictions, I imagine is what you're doing, or tighten them, and make that adjustment, run your 20. So, and then, in your 3 maxes, loosen more, and then in your single entries, loosen your restrictions all the way, or whatever you want to do. But I think it's more just like finding the right sequence for building your builds that just kind of makes it like flow a little better. I don't think that you're like gonna be able to like save, okay, like all include like all these stack types for like this build, and then like save that as like a rule. Like you're not really going to be able to do that. So you're just going to have to kind of keep detailed notes on the side, and just come in here and just say like, okay, for my single entries, I only want 4 2s and 3 3s. But then for my 150 maxes, I want to allow all of them. And, this would be like the equivalent. Like if we were to go to the main slate, that was just like a bad example with Showdown, but this is something I do. It's like I think my elevators were the last build I did. So I try and limit some of these like really correlated stacks, like the QB plus fours with a run back, and try and just not play those in my elevators. But I will check these in for my diversifier. So like I'll run my diversifier first, leave whatever I want, and then kind of come in here, uncheck them, and run it again. And so that's something I like to do. I know when Max was on here 2 weeks ago, he talked about like he runs his large field build, and then he'll come in and run his like high stakes build and kind of make some adjustments, X some guys out. I think it's totally okay to do different things for different types of contests. So I hope that helps you out a little bit. Let me know if you have any follow-up. All right. Next follow-up from Tellini based on John's question, and I just want to read this out loud and kind of keep going on it. So I echo what Jay Stanger 95 just said. I do the exact same process. I use the same 3 builds, and his suggestion would be very helpful. I generally do the single entry /3 max, then the 20, and finally the 150. So I'm always happy to take feature requests back to the team. I'm going to take the one that Chris sent in earlier in the YouTube chat. Feature request YouTube. Just making a quick note here. And John, I'll reread your question after the stream's over and just see if I can take anything from that. If you could give me like a little more context of like what exactly you're looking for. The only global exposure that you can do is here in the step 2 build screen, where you could just do like max exposure. And like if you don't want any more than like 50% of any one player in like your 150 max, you could throw that in here and this will be honored. And then you come back and you do like your other builds and you do 100. So this is like a global exposure cap. It's the only thing close to what you're asking for. If there's anything else that you want to see, just let me know in the office hours channel and I can put it in as a feature request. So okay, so next question from Fail Mary. And the question is, let's scroll down here. Just got here. What percent of pool exposure typically determines if a player is too risky? 10%, 5%, 1%? Fail Mary, I like where your head's at. I don't think any player is like, I wouldn't go about thinking about it that way. I think that, if the player is showing up in your lineups, like in your number of lineups from the pool, I think there's a reason for that. I think SaberSim is trying to tell you that, in this instance, in this bucket of sims, with these salary, with these other players in combination with this one player that's not used that often, that they're a good play. I don't think that you should like live and die by pool exposure. Like, oh, the guy's only, 1% owned. Like I shouldn't play him. Like like right here, like Justin Herbert is in 6.6% of lineups in my pool, but I have 20% of him for 3 lineups out of 15. And like, yeah, is that kind of low pool exposure? No, but in these lineups, he just fits really well and he's a good play. So I wouldn't read into too much the pool exposure and would just kind of, like you can look at it and you can acknowledge it. But, I mean, maybe if I had like 1% of Justin Herbert and then I had like 15 out of 15, I'd be a little concerned there and maybe I would dial that back. I'd say you can always compare to the other players, like what their pool exposures are. So, like we were just talking about 6% Justin Herbert, but, nobody's owned more than 14% in this build. So is that like really a bad thing to have 3% of him? So I'd say if there's like a situation where you see that and it like bothers you, I think it's like totally okay to dial that back. Inversely, Marcus Mariota is my highest pool quarterback, but I'm not forcing any exposure to him. It's saying your top positive EV builds only has Marcus Mariota in one of them. And, Geno Smith had a great day. And, you can see like in the top of this pool, like I was getting Geno Smith, Derek Carr, like Derek Carr, but like my highest EV lineups both had Geno Smith of them. And, I only had him in 2 lineups out of 15 for 9%. So I wouldn't read too far into the pool exposure there. So just a note there. Happy to talk about it more if you got any follow-up there. So, all right, next question coming in from Trouble 5. And Trouble said, Andrew, thanks for the office hours answers. Love listening along. What's your final score call for tonight? Trouble, I think you tried and buttered me up there with a compliment before trying to get me to give a take, which I don't like to do. So I'm gonna hover over to the showdown for today, and I'm gonna keep it close to what SaberSim is calling. So I'm gonna call it a 20-23 game, and we'll keep it nice and close to the mean projection there. So, all right, let's see. Okay, Fail Mary had a little follow up to the pool exposure comment, and he said this was the one from Trouble, and then this one says, I mean, more at the bottom. Should I just trim 1% pool players as a way to get less risky? Okay, so this is more of a player pool curation question, not really the way I was thinking about it. I would say that, let's go back to the main slate and let me pull up a build that's like more diversifier. So this was 150 max. Keep editing. So I'm going to pull up 150 max build that I did from Sunday. And I don't know why it's empty. Weird. Okay. Not sure what's going on here, but that's totally fine. So we're going to go back to the showdown tonight and look at this. So, could you trim players that are only showing up in 1%? Like, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I would suggest that, if you have an idea, you try it out. I mean, the truth is, I'm not going to have all the answers or all the right answers. Sometimes I might have wrong answers. So, I challenge everybody on the stream. Like, if you have an idea, put it into practice, and you can even put it into practice for like a subset of your contest portfolio. Maybe you're playing like 200 unique entries and you have an idea like this idea that Fail Mary is suggesting, like build 20 lineups for like one of your 20 maxes and say like, okay, I'm going to do something a little different in like my dime time 20 max, the 10 cent 20 max, and just kind of see how this works. Like take your lowest entry fee investment contest and do some trial and error and try some things. You might have some great ideas and just like have them put them into practice. So give it a shot. I'm always happy to give you guys my opinion, but my opinion is not always the right opinion. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to win. I'm sure like there's tons of DFS players that do things I never even thought of. So I think it's like totally okay to try trimming them down. I don't think it's necessary. I think, any player pool curation that you do should probably be in step 1. But if you're in step 3 and you're like you're seeing some things that you don't like, then I think it's totally okay to try something else and give that a shot. So, all right. So moving on to the next question. And I see a comment here from AK Knowledge. The question is, Rashid White is a good example of trusting the Sims. He was low owned, but coaches talked about getting him more involved and he earned his price. So AK, I didn't even see the part about the coaches, talking about White getting in the game more. Like that's a perfect example of like Saber Sim is not going to see that. And like, how do you even quantify that is like the better question. Because like how would we put that into the Sims? I don't know how, but that's like an awesome example of you adding value through outside sources, through keeping your ear to the ground. And if you wanted to come in here and like you heard something similar about like Kendall Blanton's going to get extra run at tight end today because Tyler Higbee's nursing an injury, like I don't know, maybe they said that, like coming in here and like bumping his projection to a projection that you intuitively feel is like feasible for Kendall Blanton given those conditions. So I think like that's always important. And so it's a huge value add. I think we saw something like that last year where Robert Woods wasn't getting a lot of catches and Sean McVay said, we're going to get Robert Woods involved. And he had like 12 catches for like 150 yards or something crazy like that. So I think that's like definitely a good thing to do. So little follow-up here from AK White showed up in my Sims. That's why I looked more into him is what I'm saying. Yeah, no, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And that, like Leonard Fournette always dominating the backfield touches. And then, they start to get blown out. So they bring in White and he catches a lot of passes out of the backfield. Saber Sim like has a range of totals for every single game, for every Sim, like some higher scoring, some lower scoring. And it seemed like, the builder was on Rashid White, and I'm happy that he got into your lineups as well. So anyways, guys, I am looking for just follow up from Hail Mary. I really like your answer. Sorry for the back and forth in office chat. No worries. It just makes it a little harder to find the questions to answer on stream. So that's why I can be a little quiet while I just kind of scroll through this and try and find it. But happy to answer your question. I'm always going to answer your guys' question the best and way I can, the most truthful and honest. I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not the best DFS player in the world, and I do not have all the answers. So, all right, guys, looking through here, I do not see any more questions. If I missed one, please call it out, and you've been waiting. So I really don't want to miss anybody. Okay, Johnny Mo. Yeah, Johnny Mo, I know you've been waiting for sure. And I have one other one here from Sammy. So, Sammy, let's answer this one. This one's a quick one. What is the difference between at least versus no more than with any rules, especially under stacks? Thanks. So, Sammy, this is a quick one. So if you come into the lineup rules and you go to add a new rule, so there's at least. So at least is like, if I say at least one, so for Showdown, there's 6 players in your lineup. So I could have, at least, if I want to say like San Francisco only. So you have to have at least one player from the opposing team. So if I say at least one on San Francisco, that means I can get a range from anywhere from 1 San Francisco player to 5 San Francisco players. But if I use no more than, if I say like no more than, we'll say like no more than 3. So then I'll only get 1 to 3 San Francisco players. But if I already use at least 3, then that means like I get 3 or more. So it'd be 3 to 5 in that case. So hopefully that clarifies your question. If you have any follow-up, just let me know. And then Sammy, I'm sorry. You told me you had a question, and then I said, okay, I'll get to it. And then I still went on to miss it, but I see it now. I'm sorry, Johnny Mo. So I see Johnny Mo's question now. So I'm going to put this in the chat and we'll get to it. Question reads, I understand in the contest selection video, it was said the best strategy involved entering low entry GPPs only and to max out on lineups. The main reason for this was that whales couldn't enter contests below $3 and also below $5 with a small enough prize pool. My question is, do you think being a strictly cash game player is a viable way to beat NBA DFS? If I were to only enter the low stakes cash games to avoid the sharps and concentrate on the NBA late swap edge, would that be enough to warrant cash game entries? Or do you think cash games are completely obsolete at this point in DFS and that GPP entries are by far the best way to go? Not sure if the sport matters, but I'd be specifically looking at NBA. Thanks. So, Johnny Mo, good question. A lot of people ask this question time to time, and it's a hard one to answer. And I'd say that there are still people making money playing cash, but those people are, as you say, like some of the sharpest people in the industry. And so, the way I like to think about it is like, how much bankroll do I have to play on a single slate? And if I had like an infinite amount of bankroll, then I would play my GPPs and I might play cash. But unfortunately, like that's not the position, most of us are in. So we kind of have to decide how we want to divvy that up. And then I just think about the edge I have in the contest that I want to choose. So like the way I think about it is, okay, I have this much bankroll to allocate. Is this better off? Is my chances of returning a positive investment higher in cash or higher in GPPs over time? And through like the research that we've done in SaberSim, we've just determined that GPPs are a better investment in time, in money, and you're more likely to have better results in GPPs because that's just where like a lot of the fishier players are playing. They want the big payouts, and they want to put $20 in and win $1 million. They don't want to put $20 in and double their money. It's a much more of a grinder's game. Cash games are. So I think like your bankroll investment is much better served in GPPs. So that's how I would think about it. I'm open to having my mind changed and any other opinions. So that's like, I know your question was like basketball specific. I think that I kind of look at all sports for like cash kind of the same. So I would avoid the cash and try and play as many GPPs until you run out of GPPs to play. We'll say that. So, all right, hopping back over to YouTube chat, just taking one more sweep, guys. I don't see anything here, and I've already swept the Discord. So I hope I got to everybody's questions. If I didn't, I apologize. I'll be right back here tomorrow. And till then, good luck in your contest tonight, and I will see you guys. So bye.